And a very good morning to all of you vaqueros. It's 11 o'clock here, 93 degrees from our Edinburgh studio, and welcome to All In with Ali. We got a lot to talk about today. Playoff baseball action, busy week for UTRGV sports. Preseason starts today. Some stories to talk about in college football, and of course, recap of week 5 of the NFL and what to look forward to in week 6. Let's get your morning started off right. The notorious B.I.G. Hypnotize. And we'll start the conversation after this. And welcome back to All In with Ali. Let's start this morning by talking about what's going on in baseball. Playoffs are well underway right now. First, biggest story I want to talk about. Congratulations, the Miracle Mets. The New York Mets, after their poor start, are going to play for the pennant this year. Yesterday, on a grand slam by Francisco Lindor and a good performance by their pitching staff, the Mets will advance to the National League Championship Series in 2024. Congratulations to them. It's been a great season. It's been a great season so far for them for the first time in it's been 9 years since the last time the Mets played for a pennant. That was in 2015. Of course, they would go on to win the pennant and get and lose 4-1 in the World Series to the Kansas City Royals that year. But Francisco Lindor clinching it on a grand slam while the Mets were down by a run, puts 4 on the board instantly. And look, a lot of people were thinking that the $341 million they handed Francisco Lindor when he signed with the Mets at first was a lot, but so far, it's been worth every penny, and I mean, the captain, the MVP, he's stepped up big time in the biggest moments for the Mets so far this year, including in yesterday's game, which, as a matter of fact, was the very first time that the Mets had clinched a series win at Citi Field in their history. So it's great for the fans to see that in person. Well, going into the National League Championship Series, I think the Mets will have to rely not just on their starting pitching that they've relied on so far. That's been very good for them, but their offense as well, finding good form, timely hitting. We saw the other game before, putting up 7 on the Phillies, and then timely hits they got from Pete Alonso, from Francisco Lindor, from all the other guys up and down their lineup. They've been on a good run. They're playing really good baseball right now. And they're going to be an incredible team to watch in the National League Championship Series. Staying with the National League right now, Dodgers and Padres, after yesterday's shutout, after the Dodgers shut out the Padres last night, the series finds itself tied at 2 games apiece, with a winner-take-all Game 5 to take place at Dodger Stadium tomorrow night at 7 p.m. That game can be caught on Fox or Channel 2 for viewers here in the Valley. It's been a good series so far. There's been a bit of give and take by both teams. Fernando Tatis has stepped up for the Padres as he always does. Manny Machado's been a good leader for them. And of course, in Game 1, you got the home run by Ohtani to get the Dodgers offense rolling, and then Mookie Betts finding his form. So for that winner-take-all Game 5 in L.A., Padres have announced that they will be sending out Yu Darvish to the mound. As of now, the Dodgers starter is to be determined, and we should see an incredible match there. I mean, that's what playoff baseball is all about, coming down to the wire like that. So hopefully we see a good game, and the winner of that game will play the New York Mets in the championship series for the National League pennant. Moving on to the American League, Tigers taking a 2-1 series lead over the Cleveland Guardians in another great performance by the Detroit pitching staff and some timely hitting. I think so far Detroit's pitching staff, the Tigers pitching staff, has just been incredible. They've gotten big outs when they've needed to. They've been lights out, and A.J. Hinch has just been pushing all the right buttons and managing his guys and getting his guys in the right situations, and should be an interesting one. Game 4 in Cleveland tonight at 5 p.m. on TNT. The Guardians will be sending out Tanner Bibby to the mound, And the Tigers starter is to be determined, but if this run has taught us anything, is that AJ Hinch will likely be employing pitching chaos like he did in Houston in Game 2 of the Wild Card Series. So really, it's just picking and choosing names out of a hat to see who would open that game, and I think that will most likely be a bullpen game for the Tigers. And I don't see any reason why they would start Tariq Skubal on short rest. Should the Tigers lose that game in Cleveland, they would rather have him facing. I'm sorry, the game's not in Cleveland; it's in Detroit. That's my apologies there. They would rather have him go back to Cleveland, going back to Cleveland and towing the slab for the Tigers in Game 5 should the Tigers lose tonight. But should they clinch, Tariq Skubal would be the Game 1 starter for the Detroit Tigers. And staying in the National League, the Yankees take a 2-1 series lead over the Royals after winning last night in Kauffman Stadium in Kansas City. Giancarlo Stanton with a late-inning home run, and he hit the ball pretty hard. He was probably the biggest driver behind the Yankees offense yesterday, and then just shut down pitching by the Yankees bullpen was able to advance them over the Royals in Game 3. Game 4, again in Kauffman Stadium, will take place tonight at 7 p.m. That game will be on TBS and should be a duel between two good pitchers. Yankees will be sending their ace Garrett Cole to the mound. The Royals will be sending Michael Wacha. Both starters have struggled in some parts in this postseason, but should be an incredible duel. Both pitchers in need of a bit of a reset game. So it's going to be one of those games. It's going to be a grind out. It's going to be who blinks first, and it's going to come down to who blinks first in the end in that one. Royals with their season on the line as the division series is coming to a close. Games 4 and possibly Game 5 Game 4 taking place tonight, and a possible Game 5 to take place on Saturday. As for the championship series, the NLCS will begin on Sunday, and the American League pennant, that series, will start to be played for on Monday. Stick around. We'll talk about what a busy week it's been here for UTRGV Athletics, and we'll talk some NBA preseason as well. Don't change the station. We'll be back after these messages. I Was Made for Loving You by Kiss to close out the break. Welcome back to All In with Ali. Let's talk about a busy week it's going to be here at UTRGV in terms of athletics. Starting with Tuesday, UTRGV dropping a heartbreaker against rivals A&M Corpus. 3 sets to 2. That game went down to the wire, but ultimately UTRGV was outlasted by Corpus in that one. And the volleyball team will go back out tonight in search of their first win at the UTRGV Fieldhouse. Speaking of sports tonight, there's a doubleheader in Edinburgh. Volleyball, as I mentioned earlier, is playing tonight, and men's soccer will take the field at 6:30. Both of those games taking place at 6:30. Volleyball will take on Northwestern State. Men's soccer will take on Utah Valley. Both of those are conference matchups, and both of those are games UTRGV will need to win going forward to keep their aspirations for conference playoffs or for conference titles. Vaquero Stadium will be receiving an upgrade. Construction has yet to begin, but the UTRGV athletics department announced that it will be lowering the field. It will be adding elevators for ADA compliance. We'll be adding about 3,000 seats for a student section, and all sorts of upgrades estimated to be around in the $35 million range. For more, read the story at utrgvwriter.com. And NBA preseason action. Or on one more point at UTRGV Sports, women's swimming and diving will have their very first meet Saturday at 11 a.m. at the Farr Natatorium, at the PSJA Natatorium in Farr, Texas. So that will be their very first meet in program history, and hopefully some positive history to be made for UTRGV right there. NBA preseason underway. Yesterday, we saw for the first time on the court Chris Paul and Victor Wembanyama taking the stage in San Antonio against the Hornets. We saw glimpses of what of how good that connection could be. I saw Chris Paul just had an incredible lob over to Victor Wembanyama for an easy bucket. I mean, it's easy because he's 7 foot, but just Wembanyama is just such a freak athlete, and he's just able to do things that no one should be able to do. Even taking his size out of the equation, he's an incredible player. Having someone that can finally pass him the ball consistently, such as Chris Paul, will be huge for him. I think there's a lot of potential, a lot of excitement in San Antonio around the Spurs right now. And then another thing we got to see first of was LeBron James and Bronny taking the court at the same time. Bronny didn't play that very many minutes. I think he only saw about 6 in his last preseason game. But we saw 2 of them on the court at the same time. What the future holds for that, we don't know, but we'll hopefully see something there, and hopefully that develops a bit more as it goes on. And last but the biggest news coming out of the NBA this week, Danny Green, after a 15-year career, is hanging it up. He announced his retirement earlier this morning. A 3-time NBA champion with the San Antonio Spurs in 2014, the Toronto Raptors in 2019, and with the Lakers in 2020. He was most known as a three-point specialist and an incredible leader in the locker room. And growing up watching Danny Green in that playoff run, as the sort of the last dance between all the Spurs greats like Ginobili, Parker, and Duncan, and with the young Kawhi Leonard as well. Danny Green just sort of kept all that together that year, and he was everything you could have asked for as a Spur. He won a championship here when he got traded to Toronto. He also was an incredible team player over there, winning a ring in 2019 alongside Kawhi Leonard. And it's just an incredible career. Congratulations, Danny Green, Spurs legend, Raptors legend, Lakers legend, and just a huge, huge legend in the game. Congratulations on an incredible career, and we wish him the very best moving forward. Next segment, we'll talk a little bit of college football. Some upsets, some matchups to look up to next week. And we'll be back. Don't touch the dial. This is Vaquero Radio, the Valley's student station. Somebody told me by the Killers closing off that break. Welcome back to All In with Ali, bottom of the hour here in Edinburgh, and we'll shift the discussion now to what was something that absolutely took me by surprise last week. Vanderbilt upsetting Alabama at home, and Bama came into that game ranked number 1 in the nation, but then they go into Vanderbilt, and Vanderbilt just played a much better game. And this is not something you're used to seeing from Alabama. I mean, Nick Saban called it the easiest place to play in the SEC, but then after he retired, he's not the head coach there anymore. And then just for Bama to absolutely stun us by dropping that, and for Vanderbilt, incredible for Vanderbilt to come out with a win there. They played an incredible game. It was just absolutely surprising to see that. I mean, I was shocked. That was a win that most people had that like marked as a win on Bama's calendar. I mean, upsets happen in college football, but that was upset of upsets this year. In the year we've had quite a couple of them. As a result, Bama will drop in both the coaches poll and the AP poll, and on a bye week, Texas will go back to the number 1 spot. Speaking of number 1 ranked Texas, Red River Showdown will take place on Saturday. Now, that should be an incredible game. Texas going in ranked 1, Oklahoma ranked number 18. That game is going to take place at 2:30. Keep an eye out on that. It should be a good one. Another matchup to keep an eye on. Number 2 Ohio State will go to Eugene to take on number 3 ranked Oregon. A battle between 2 top 5 teams in the AP and coaches poll. I think that'll be an incredible game. Keep an eye out on it. Some more retirement news announced today. Nadal has announced that he will retire. He will end his illustrious tennis career after being at the top for so many years, including 22 Grand Slams in his career. He will play his final game in the Davis Cup representing Spain. That tournament will begin on November 19th. We'll talk NFL recap of Week 5 in the next segment. Looking forward to Week 6. Other stories in the National Football League and on this day in sports history. Don't change the station. We'll be back. This is Vaquero Radio. J. Cole closing off that break right there. Welcome back to All In with Ali. Bottom of the hour. Let's talk some NFL. Starting with a recap last week, and let's start off with the first game that took place that last week, and that was an incredible one. Bucks versus Falcons. Falcons ended up winning in overtime in that game, and what was just an incredible offensive shootout between two teams. I think the NFC South is a stronger division than most people took for at the start of the season. And also there was the whole thing that no one expects Thursday night football games to be good because both teams are coming off short rest. But we were treated to an incredible football game, and the Falcons are playing some incredible football. Kirk Cousins absolutely was the right choice to be under center for the Falcons. He's played incredible. If it weren't for one bad pass interference call, I think they'd have another win, but the way that the Falcons are winning games in just dramatic fashion, it's just incredible to see, and it's great for the game. Next game to sort of recap was Bills and Texans. What we saw from the Texans in the first half of that game was sort of what we were promised of seeing from the Texans, just incredible offense, lockdown defense. And that's what I was sort of talking about and hinting at last week. If the Texans were to clean up those penalties, clean up the offensive penalties and the false starts, then they could play some incredible football. Unfortunately, Nico Collins going down with an injury. He'll be sidelined for at least 4 weeks, but Texans are hoping he makes a good recovery from that injury. But then things sort of fell apart in the second half of that game. Some errors on offense, some turnovers led to and some big plays by the Bills brought them back into this game. They found themselves tied at 20, and I don't know. It was just, I was completely dumbfounded by some of the coaching decisions that Sean McDermott made at the end of that game. See, when the Bills got the ball back with about like a minute or so left on the clock, they were at their own 5, and McDermott calling for not 1, not 2, but 3 straight pass plays. It was just wasting so much time that they didn't have, and especially because Josh Allen was I think was 9 for 30 if I'm not mistaken. He wasn't having his best night passing the football, but the running game was sort of working, and so I didn't understand why Sean McDermott didn't go to that. I didn't understand why that wasn't considered an option. So much valuable time was taken off the clock just trying to go deep from your own 5. And then ultimately, of course, Texans got the ball back, and Kaimi Fairbairn drills it from 50+ like he's been doing all year. And becomes, I think now, he's the all-time leading scorer in Texans history. So great game for the Texans to get out with a win. It was an ugly one, but it wins a win in the win column. Ravens and Bengals, and what was, I think, the biggest offensive shootout of Week 5. Ravens ran the ball well, like they always do a good job running the ball, and Lamar Jackson having a great game. And so did Joe Burrow. It was just an epic duel between two quarterbacks, over close to 500 yards of offense for both teams. But then crucial mistakes for the Bengals, and Now they find themselves at 1-4, and I mean, at this point, what else does Joe Burrow have to do? I mean, he did everything he could in that game, and still the Bengals couldn't come out with a win. It's what's been an incredibly tough season for Cincinnati this year. Speaking of tough seasons, Cardinals upsetting the San Francisco 49ers today at the 3 o'clock slot last week. And they think the injuries are starting to take a toll now on the 49ers. Jake Moody went down with an injury. Crucial mistake by Jordan Mason at the end of that game that led to the comeback drive for the Cardinals. Kyler Murray had a pretty good offensive game. He was finding his targets. Also, Brock Purdy as well. And Brandon Ayuk finally getting the breakout game after a couple of not so stellar performances. He finally breaks out in this one, and I think that's sort of what the 49ers need to get him going to keep their offense going forward. And then last but not least, Steelers and Cowboys in a game that came down to the wire. Cowboys escaping that one. That was a pretty tough one after the rain delay, and then a couple of crucial mistakes by the Cowboys and a turnover at the goal line that they ultimately recovered and went back to score in that drive. 2 interceptions by Dak Prescott. They came out with a win. Steelers defense played good. Cowboys defense got the stop when they needed to, and it was just a close game. That weather might have also played a factor in that, but I think both teams could come out of that game with the sense of with a sense of having done something good, because that was just an incredible game right there at the Sunday Night Football slot. Matchups to watch for Week 6: Commanders and Ravens. Ravens coming off a win, so are the Commanders. Jaden Daniels has played an incredible quarterback, played an incredible under center this year as the quarterback for the Commanders, and the Ravens sort of after a tough start, they put it back together. They're running the ball well. Lamar Jackson's slinging it well too, and I think that's going to be a good offensive shootout there. Another offensive shootout to look out for: Lions-Cowboys. I think that will be. I'm probably going to say that this is going to be the highest scoring game of the season so far. Lions, we know that they can run the ball well. We know they've got some pretty good weapons good weapons down the field. Sam Laporta is looking for a bit of a bounce back right now after a slow start. And Jamison Williams and Amon-Ra St. Brown, you don't really have to say anything much about them. And just I think is the best running back tandem in the league in David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. David Montgomery, more your traditional bell cow running back, while Jahmyr Gibbs has got a bit more of the receiving upside. So Detroit's offense is pretty good. And then Cowboys offense also figuring things out. Jaden Tolbert had a good game. CeeDee Lamb is CeeDee Lamb. I mean, nothing. You don't got to say anything else about CeeDee Lamb, because he's been incredible. And Rico Dowdle starting to figure things out in the Cowboys running game. So I think this will be a very high-scoring game, not a lot of defense, even though they do have some pieces on defense, but I think the Cowboys' defense is a little banged up, and Detroit's defense is as well. Their depth is being challenged, so that will be a very high-scoring affair. And then Cardinals and Packers will also be a good offensive affair there too. Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison starting to find that connection. And then Jaden Reed and Jordan Love will hopefully put that together as well. I think that will be a great game to watch. Other stories across the NFL: Robert Saleh was just fired by the New York Jets with the discussion that he was going to demote Nathaniel Hackett from his duties as the offensive play caller, and not long after he was fired by the Jets. I honestly don't think that move made any sense at all whatsoever. I mean, the Jets have many problems on offense, and firing a defensive-minded head coach like Saleh was not the move. This screams of a power play by Nathaniel Hackett, and he will still continue to be the offensive play caller moving forward. They're bringing up the defensive another member of the defensive coaching staff to be the interim head coach. I think Saleh finds a job easily as a defensive coordinator elsewhere, and wish for him all the best, but I did not understand this move at all by the New York Jets. This, to me, screams of a power play by Nathaniel Hackett. And remember, Aaron Rodgers wanted Nathaniel Hackett there at the helm in the offensive position, and the Jets have struggled on offense. Their line has struggled. Their running game hasn't been good the last 2 weeks of the season, and who knows? That's a lot of chaos going on down in the Jets organization right now. And then Deshaun Watson, another terrible game for him this week. It's looking more and more like, even though that coaches and the GM are saying that Deshaun Watson will be their starter under center, it's looking more and more. It looks like it'll make more and more sense to start Jameis Winston instead. $210 million guaranteed. Guaranteed, mind you, in the light of all the allegations that Deshaun Watson was facing, and it's all not paying out any well. He was great in Houston, but he hasn't found that at all in his time with the Browns. And so that will be a total mess going down there. That's going to wrap the NFL discussion. Let's move on. On this day in sports history, in 1956, the New York Yankees win Game 7 of the World Series at Ebbets Field in Brooklyn behind 2 home runs by Yogi Berra. Don Larson winning the MVP of that World Series, of course, famously having pitched a perfect game in Game 5 at Yankee Stadium. In 1961, the MLB expansion draft took place for 2 new expansion teams, the New York Mets and the Colt 45s. The Colt 45s would, of course, be renamed to be the Houston Astros we know and love today here. In 2004, Michael Schumacher sets the record with 13 for most wins by a driver in an F1 season, with 13, by winning the Japanese Grand Prix in Suzuka. This record would later be broken by Sebastian Vettel in 2013, and later on by another Red Bull driver in Max Verstappen. He breaks it in 2022, and he broke it again in 2023. Well, that's going to wrap up the discussion this week. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to tune in to our other programs here at Vaquero Radio. We have office hours tomorrow at 10 a.m. That will be live here from our Edinburgh studio. Join us next week here at All In with Ali for more playoff action, more recap of the NFL, and other stories across sports. The best stories, best takes. Tune in next week on Vaquero Radio, the Valley Student Station. That's gonna be a wrap for us here at All In with Ali. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a great week. Have a great week, everyone.